The airlock doors slid open with a soft hiss, releasing a wave of warm, recycled air that carried the faint tang of ozone and polished metal. I stepped onto the palace platform, my boots echoing lightly on the smooth, silver alloy floor. Above me, towering spires of the Queen's palace gleamed under the pale light of twin suns, their surfaces reflecting and bending the light in ways that made the entire structure appear liquid, alive, almost breathing. This was not merely a building, it was a declaration of power, culture, and a history that spanned millennia. And here I was, a lone human, holding a fragile, earth-born bouquet in trembling hands. The flowers were an oddity here. They were bright, soft, colorful, petals of crimson, lavender, and gold that seemed almost defiant amidst the cold, sharp elegance of the alien architecture. I could feel their weight, not just in my hands but in my chest. It was not a gift meant to impress with grandeur or ceremony. It was human, intimate, a gesture of respect, curiosity, and something unspoken I had not fully admitted to myself yet. I moved forward slowly. The palace corridors were lined with guards, tall, angular beings with metallic-toned skin that shimmered faintly with every movement. Their eyes were multifaceted, like crystalline lenses, scanning, assessing, calculating. Yet they did not approach. They simply observed, maintaining an almost eerie stillness, as though the very act of my walking past was a test of confidence, of intent. I swallowed, feeling my throat dry, but I forced myself onward. Every step echoed, a tiny percussion against the vast silence of the palace. At the heart of this labyrinth, a figure waited. The Queen. Her presence was immediate, magnetic, and terrifying. She stood upon a raised dais, her posture regal, commanding, yet with an elegance that softened the edge of authority. Her armor, if it could even be called that, was a blend of deep crimson and polished gold, etched with alien glyphs that shimmered when they caught the light. It was ceremonial, yet functional, like a second skin designed to announce both beauty and power. Her face was framed by a cascade of fiery hair, red like molten copper, reflecting the palace's light with a subtle luminescence. Her features, while alien in subtle ways, bore a resonance of humanity that unsettled me. Her eyes, large and violet, seemed almost liquid, holding centuries of wisdom, strategy, and a hint of loneliness. She did not speak immediately. She simply watched, tilting her head ever so slightly, as if she could read not just my intent but my very soul. I extended the bouquet, hands trembling slightly. My voice, when it finally came, was barely audible above the soft hum of the palace. For you, Your Majesty. Her eyes flickered downward, then back up, and for a moment, the universe seemed to pause. The guards stiffened, anticipating protocol. The air itself felt taut, a charged wire strung across the dais. And then she moved. It was a motion so fluid, so controlled, that I barely registered the distance closing between us. Her hands reached for the flowers, but instead of taking them with the formal, distant courtesy I expected, she pressed them against her chest. The warmth radiated instantly, a silent acknowledgement that no words could convey. Then, before I could fully comprehend, her arms enveloped me in a hug. It was not just an embrace, it was a statement. It was recognition, curiosity, and an unspoken challenge all wrapped in a single gesture. My heart hammered against my ribcage as I realized how close we were, the heat from her body mingling with mine, the fragrance of the alien flora blending with the familiar scent of the bouquet. I had never expected this, not from a ruler of her magnitude, not in a place so steeped in ritual and tradition. And then came the kiss. Soft, tentative, yet charged with an intensity that made the air itself vibrate. Her lips met mine with a precision that was startling in its control, yet it carried an undercurrent of something raw, something unfiltered. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, as if time had slowed to accommodate the impossibility of it. Around us, the palace seemed to dissolve, the gleaming walls, the silent guards, the distant twin suns, all irrelevant. There was only the Queen, and there was only me. When we finally parted, her eyes held mine. No words were spoken, yet her gaze asked something I could not articulate. Did you come here with courage? With sincerity? Or was this mere folly? I nodded, still catching my breath, still unsure if I was awake or dreaming. The flowers trembled slightly in my hands, a reminder of the fragile, human gesture that had somehow bridged a chasm of culture, species, and centuries. She smiled then, a small, enigmatic curl of her lips that held the weight of a galaxy. It was the kind of smile that could inspire loyalty, fear, or hope, depending on the heart that beheld it. For me, it ignited a spark I had not felt in years. A connection, immediate and inexplicable, that was both thrilling and terrifying. The Queen stepped back, a silent command flowing through her posture. The guards relaxed imperceptibly, acknowledging that the ritual, whatever it had been, was complete. Yet, despite the outward return to protocol, the air between us remained charged. Every movement, every glance, carried the residue of what had just occurred, a bond formed in a single, improbable instant. I took a cautious step forward, unsure what came next, my mind racing through scenarios I had rehearsed countless times on the voyage here. Yet all rehearsals, all logic, all careful diplomacy crumbled in the presence of her gaze. She was a ruler, a legend, an alien beyond comprehension, and yet she had chosen, in a fleeting moment, to lower the distance between us. It was then I realized the true weight of the gesture. The flowers were no longer merely a gift. They were a bridge. They were an offering of trust, of respect, of curiosity, and she had accepted it, not with words, not with ceremony, but with touch. The palace around us, the history, the politics, all of it receded into the background. In that instant, the impossible became tangible. I inhaled deeply, feeling the scent of the flowers mingle with the subtle, warm essence of her presence, grounding me, reminding me that I was real, that this was real. And as her eyes lingered on mine, I understood something I had not anticipated. Some gestures transcend species, transcend protocol, transcend expectation. Some gestures, like the offering of flowers, can ignite a spark that neither time nor distance can extinguish. And in the silence that followed, amidst the gleaming towers and the waiting guards, I felt it, the fragile, extraordinary beginning of something neither of us could have predicted, yet neither of us could deny. After that first, impossible moment, the palace seemed to shift subtly around me. What had once appeared rigid and untouchable, the glimmering walls, the soaring ceilings, the guards who never blinked, now felt almost alive, responding to the spark that had been ignited in that instant. The Queen stood a step away, her eyes still fixed on mine, observing, calculating, but with a softness I hadn't expected from someone who commanded entire worlds. The flowers in my hands quivered slightly, petals catching the light like tiny mirrors, yet the true illumination came from her presence itself, a warmth that no amount of gold or crimson armor could rival. She gestured subtly, a fluid motion that spoke of centuries of training and control. "Come with me," she said, her voice like liquid velvet, each word weighted and measured. Not a command, not a suggestion, something between an invitation and a test. I followed instinctively, the echo of my boots on the polished floor mingling with the soft hum of the palace. Around us, the hallways curved and twisted in ways that defied my understanding of architecture, every surface shimmering as though aware of the touch of light, of life, of presence. It was mesmerizing, disorienting, intoxicating. As we walked, I couldn't stop stealing glances at her. The armor that had seemed so forbidding from a distance now appeared almost sculptural, highlighting the subtle lines of her form, the strength that belied elegance, the careful balance between authority and allure. I realized I was holding my breath, aware of the intimacy that lingered in the space between us. Each step carried with it the weight of unspoken questions, of silent negotiations of understanding across species and experience. Finally, she led me to a chamber that overlooked the palace gardens, an alien landscape of towering bioluminescent flora, twisting vines that glowed faintly under the alien suns, and streams of liquid that refracted light in colors I had no names for. The room was vast yet intimate, designed to make even a visitor feel both insignificant and welcomed at the same time. She stepped closer to the window, motioning for me to place the flowers on a crystalline pedestal. "They are extraordinary," she said, touching the petals lightly with her fingertips. The action was delicate, reverent, and yet there was something intimate about it, the kind of care one reserves for something fragile, something treasured. Her eyes met mine again, and in that gaze I sensed a question unspoken. Did you truly understand what you brought with you? I nodded, unsure of the proper words, but certain that my gesture had bridged a chasm I hadn't even fully perceived. And then, almost imperceptibly, she moved closer. The air between us thickened with anticipation, charged with something neither protocol nor reason could define. Her hand brushed mine, lightly, accidentally, yet every nerve ending in my body reacted as though struck by electricity. The room seemed to shrink, the distance between us vanishing as if the universe itself had conspired to make this moment possible. I did not expect, I began, but my voice faltered. How could I explain the turmoil of my thoughts, the confusion of my heart, the awe that coursed through me at being this close to someone so impossibly regal, so terrifyingly alive? She tilted her head slightly, a faint smile touching her lips, as if she already understood and found amusement in my fumbling attempts at speech. Instead of answering, she stepped closer still, and suddenly, the world contracted to the space between us. Her presence was overwhelming in a way that made rational thought impossible. Her warmth, her scent, the subtle hum of life that radiated from her. And then, she did it again, she pulled me into an embrace. This time, it was different from the first. It was not a fleeting, electric shock of contact but a slow, deliberate melding of space, a gesture that communicated trust, curiosity, and a strange, unnameable desire. My arms wrapped around her almost instinctively, though I remained acutely aware of the gravity of the moment. I felt her heart, or whatever organs served the same purpose in her alien physiology, beat against me, a rhythmic confirmation of life, of presence, of shared vulnerability. And then, impossibly, she kissed me again. This kiss was longer, deeper, demanding yet patient, and it carried the weight of unspoken words, histories, promises, and questions. Time stretched, elongating each second into an eternity where nothing else mattered but the convergence of two beings from completely different worlds. Every nerve in my body was alive, every thought suspended, as I experienced a connection that defied understanding, that challenged the very logic of reality. When we finally pulled away, both of us breathing slightly heavier, the Queen's eyes bore into mine with a force that was both calming and terrifying. "You carry more than flowers, human," she said softly, almost to herself. "You carry courage, and understanding that few can fathom." I swallowed hard, unsure if my heart could handle the intensity of her words, or the weight of the gaze that accompanied them. For a long moment, we simply stood there, the alien gardens outside shimmering like living jewels, the bouquet between us a fragile anchor to a shared reality. She tilted her head again, a gesture so small yet filled with nuance, and I realized that she was inviting me, not just to continue this encounter, but to step further into her world, to traverse the boundaries between species, between expectations, between the life I had known and the life that suddenly seemed possible. "Walk with me," she said finally, turning from the window. Her hand brushed mine again, and I followed, feeling the pull of something larger than either of us, something that transcended logic, protocol, or fear. Around us, the palace seemed to respond, the light shifting, the surfaces shimmering, the very air vibrating with a subtle resonance, as if the building itself acknowledged the union of courage and openness, human and alien, fragile and immortal. With each step, I felt the impossible reality settle deeper into my consciousness. I was not merely a visitor here. I had crossed thresholds, not just of space, but of understanding. In offering flowers, I had done something no human diplomat, no ambassador, no scholar could have accomplished in centuries of study. I had reached out with something simple, something pure, and the Queen had responded, not with formality, not with cold assessment, but with a warmth that was as alien as it was profound. And as we moved through the corridors, shadows and light dancing across our path, I realized that this was only the beginning. The first spark had been lit, fragile yet undeniable. What came next, what challenges and revelations awaited, I could not yet know. But I understood, with a clarity that startled me, that this simple act of offering flowers had altered everything. I had opened a door that could never be closed again, and the Queen had stepped through it with me. The corridors of the palace seemed endless, yet as I followed the Queen, they no longer felt intimidating. The metallic walls shimmered softly under the alien lights, reflecting the subtle movements of her crimson and gold armor. Each step she took was precise, measured, yet imbued with a grace that seemed almost unnatural for a being of her stature. I struggled to keep pace, not in speed, but in presence. Every glance, every micro-expression of hers demanded my full attention, a constant reminder that here, nothing could be taken lightly. We entered a chamber unlike any other I had seen in the palace. It was circular, lined with transparent panels that offered a panoramic view of the alien city sprawling below. Towers glinted like gemstones beneath the twin suns, while floating vessels traced arcs of light through the sky, weaving paths that were both orderly and mesmerizingly chaotic. The air carried a delicate hum, almost musical in tone, vibrating through my chest in a way that felt intimate and invasive all at once. She gestured toward the center of the room, a subtle motion that beckoned me forward. I hesitated, aware that each movement in her presence felt amplified, scrutinized, yet I obeyed instinctively. The pedestal before us was unlike the one that held the flowers. This one was low, circular, with faint engravings that pulsed softly as if alive, responding to the energy between us. "You have shown courage," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the chamber, resonant, controlled, yet tinged with a softness I had never heard before. "But courage alone does not sustain trust. Understanding does. Vulnerability does. Will you allow yourself to be vulnerable with me?" I swallowed hard. The question was simple in words, yet impossible in scope. Vulnerability was something humans reserved for solitude, for intimates, for moments shielded from the eyes of the world. Yet here, with her, I felt the weight of every choice I had ever made, every risk, every act of humanity that had led me to this very moment. I nodded, almost imperceptibly. Her eyes softened, a rare break in the armor of centuries. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine, not formally, not ceremonially, but with the casual intimacy of someone testing the bounds of closeness. My pulse quickened, my breath catching, and yet I felt a strange calm in the storm of sensations. She was not merely a ruler, a legend, or an alien of unmatched power. She was a being capable of connection, capable of recognizing the fragile human thread I carried with me, and acknowledging it with a warmth that defied logic. And then, she did something entirely unexpected. She guided my hands toward the bouquet I had placed on the pedestal. "Touch them," she instructed softly. I did, my fingers grazing the petals, feeling the delicate textures, the subtle vibrations that seemed almost alive. The Queen mirrored the motion, her hand resting atop mine, the warmth from her skin, or whatever substance served her equivalent, spreading into me like fire through ice. In that instant, I realized the profound truth of the gesture I had made earlier. The flowers were more than a gift. They were a bridge, a tangible symbol of humanity's fragility and resilience, a reminder that even in a world of metal and alien sophistication, small, delicate acts could hold power greater than armies, fleets, or centuries of strategy. And she recognized it. She honored it. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper, yet it resonated deeply. "You see what I see. You understand without words what must often be forced through ceremony or obligation." My chest tightened. Every fiber of my being responded to her presence, to her proximity, to the sheer weight of her acknowledgement. Then, without warning, she leaned forward again, her lips brushing against mine. This kiss was neither tentative nor fleeting, it was deliberate, a conversation without words, a revelation without explanation. I felt her hands at my back, drawing me closer, anchoring me in a reality that had until now seemed impossible. Around us, the chamber seemed to pulse in sync with our shared breath, the alien city below fading into irrelevance, the palace itself receding into the background. There was only her, only me, and the fragile, electric thread that connected our worlds in a single moment. When we separated, her gaze held mine with an intensity that was almost unbearable. "Trust is not given lightly," she murmured. And yet you have earned a measure of it. That is no small thing, human. I nodded, words failing me. Every instinct screamed caution, every emotion urged restraint, yet the depth of connection I felt made hesitation seem impossible. She guided me to a low, reflective surface at the center of the chamber, a pool of liquid that shimmered like mercury under the light. Look, she said, her voice steady, commanding yet intimate. I bent over the surface, peering into the swirling reflections. Images of Earth flickered faintly, alongside visions of her world, landscapes, people, histories, events I could not fully comprehend. The pool acted as a mirror of consciousness, a reflection of what was and what could be, merging human and alien perspectives in a single, fluid vision. This is what I see, she explained. Not just the world, but the potential within it, within you. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, grounding me, affirming the reality of her presence. I could feel the subtle pulse beneath her skin, or whatever replaced it, each beat syncing with the rhythm of the images, the cadence of the universe as it unfolded before me. I realized then that the Queen was not merely a ruler or a figurehead. She was a being of immense perception, capable of bridging gaps that even the most advanced diplomats could never hope to cross. And yet, despite this, she had chosen to engage with me, not with suspicion, not with detachment, but with curiosity, with warmth, with an intimacy that shattered every expectation I had brought with me. Her hand tightened slightly on mine, and she leaned forward, whispering something I almost didn't catch. What you have offered, courage, understanding, connection, is rare. It is precious. And it has consequences. My heart raced. Consequences were a language I understood all too well, yet the weight of her words, coupled with the depth of the connection we shared, left me momentarily speechless. She stepped back, giving me space yet maintaining an undeniable presence. The room seemed to breathe with us, alive and attuned to the fragile equilibrium we had established. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle shift in posture communicated a depth of intention, a careful navigation of trust, intimacy, and power that was almost overwhelming. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. What I had thought of as a simple act, offering flowers, had set in motion forces far beyond my comprehension. It had forged a bridge not merely between two individuals, but between entire worlds, between humanity and the unimaginable complexity of her civilization. And she had met me halfway, acknowledging the risk, the vulnerability, and the potential that lay in that singular, human gesture. I breathed deeply, grounding myself in the moment, aware that every heartbeat, every pulse, every fleeting thought was shared, mirrored, understood. The Queen's gaze held me, steady, unyielding, yet not unkind. And in that shared silence, in the resonance of our connection, I realized that the future, our future, was no longer something I could anticipate. It was something I would experience, moment by moment, in the fragile, electrifying space between her world and mine. The chamber's ambient glow softened as the twin suns dipped lower on the horizon, spilling long streaks of amber and violet across the alien city outside. Shadows stretched and intertwined with the reflections of the bioluminescent flora inside, creating a surreal kaleidoscope of light and motion. The air carried a quiet hum, a resonance that seemed almost alive, vibrating faintly with the rhythm of the Queen's presence. Every sound, my breath, the faint rustle of the bouquet, the subtle creak of the floor panels, was amplified in the intimacy of the moment. We stood facing each other, closer now than ever, yet both acutely aware of the weight pressing between us. What had started as a simple gesture, a bouquet of flowers from a human to an alien queen, had transformed into something far beyond the bounds of ritual, diplomacy, or expectation. In her eyes I saw not just curiosity or amusement, but a question laden with centuries of consequence. What will you choose to do now? The Queen's hand brushed against mine, tentative yet deliberate, and in that single touch, I felt the full gravity of the bond that had been forged. It was more than attraction, more than connection. It was an acknowledgement of trust, courage, and shared vulnerability. Each heartbeat seemed to echo through the chamber, syncing with the pulsing light of the bioluminescent plants, as though the universe itself paused to witness this convergence of worlds. Human, she murmured, her voice low and resonant, carrying a mixture of authority and intimacy. You have offered me more than mere flowers. You have offered understanding, presence, and courage, the qualities that define our potential for connection. And in return, I must offer you a choice. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt the weight of millennia pressing against my spine, the echoes of her civilization, the power she wielded, and the fragility of the human life I carried. The choice she spoke of was not trivial. It was monumental. Yet it was intimate, personal, rooted in the bond that had grown between us in this improbable, fragile moment. I met her gaze, searching for guidance, for assurance, for a sign that my humanity, my vulnerability, and my courage were enough. And then I saw it, a subtle, almost imperceptible flicker in her expression, a trace of hope, curiosity, and trust. She was offering me not only a moment, but a pathway into a life that defied the boundaries of worlds, species, and history. Do you understand? She asked, her hand still lightly resting on mine. The choice is yours. To accept it is to step beyond what you have known, to reject it is to remain within your own world. But know this, what we have shared cannot be undone, and the consequences, whether of courage or hesitation, will echo far beyond this chamber. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the palace, the resonance of her presence, and the fragile bouquet I had carried as a symbol of humanity. My mind raced through possibilities, diplomatic repercussions, the unknown dangers of interstellar politics, the fragile nature of human life in a galaxy that was vast and often indifferent. Yet none of it mattered in that moment. The only thing that mattered was the connection between us, the spark that had been ignited by something as simple as offering flowers, and nurtured through trust, understanding, and intimacy. Without speaking, I extended my hand fully, taking hers with deliberate intent. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of the decision I had made, and then she leaned in once more, her lips brushing mine with the soft precision that had become our language, our bond. This kiss was no longer tentative. It was a declaration, a bridge, a promise forged in the quiet sanctity of a palace that had witnessed centuries yet bowed to the simplicity of a human gesture. When we finally separated, her eyes held mine with unwavering intensity. Then it is done, she said, a quiet affirmation that carried both relief and anticipation. Your courage has granted you a place not only in my presence but in the future of our worlds. Together, we will navigate what comes next. The words resonated in me, anchoring the surreal experience in reality. I realized that in offering flowers, I had not merely honored her as a ruler. I had opened the door to a bond that transcended species, history, and expectation. It was a beginning, fragile yet undeniable, that would demand courage, understanding, and trust from both of us. And in that realization, a profound sense of purpose settled over me, a clarity that I had never known before. The Queen stepped back slightly, giving me space yet maintaining a presence that was impossible to ignore. Come, she said softly. Let us walk together. Her hand found mine again, warm and grounding, and as we moved toward the panoramic windows, the city below glimmered like a constellation of possibilities. Each light, each vessel, each shadow seemed to reflect the potential that had been unlocked in this moment, a universe of choices now tethered to the fragile human-alien bond we shared. We walked in silence for a time, the hum of the palace, the pulse of the bioluminescent flora, and the distant sounds of the city forming a symphony around us. In that quiet, I understood that intimacy was not only in gestures or words but in presence, in attention, in the willingness to acknowledge vulnerability and embrace it. The Queen, for all her power and authority, had revealed this to me, not through commands or displays, but through trust, curiosity, and a willingness to connect. Finally, she stopped at a balcony that extended beyond the chamber, offering an unobstructed view of the twin suns setting over the alien horizon. The sky blazed with colors that had no name in any human language, a tapestry of light and shadow that mirrored the complexity of what we shared. She turned to me, her expression both regal and profoundly human, and for a moment, all pretense of protocol fell away. You have changed the course of what was expected, she said quietly. Not through force, not through strategy, but through something far rarer, sincerity. That is the true measure of courage. I felt my chest tighten, aware of the immense weight of her words and the depth of the bond they implied. In offering flowers, I had crossed thresholds I could never have anticipated. In accepting her presence, she had done the same. And together, in that singular, fragile moment, we had created a connection that defied the boundaries of space, culture, and expectation, a bond that would shape the trajectory of both our lives, and perhaps the fate of worlds. As the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet, gold, and crimson, the Queen reached out once more, intertwining her fingers with mine. We stood together in silence, the palace humming softly around us, a testament to the extraordinary in the ordinary. In that stillness, I realized that courage, understanding, and a simple human gesture, offering flowers, could indeed ripple across time, species, and the very fabric of existence itself. And in that quiet, infinite moment, I understood, the impossible had become reality. The Queen had accepted not just the bouquet, but me. And I had accepted her, and whatever the future held,